Hello, welcome to the Philosophy, Science, and Religion podcast. I'm Chandler Klebs, and I'm here with Daniel Decastro, Quayd, Juris, and WSD Time.
Yeah!
Yeah, I love when he does that. Yeah, and I believe the topic for today is Agnosticism A Reasonable Position for, what was that, Juris, you mentioned this?
Life, universe, and everything.
Okay, is agnosticism a reasonable position for life, the universe, and everything? So that sounds interesting, Juris. So can you clarify what this means?
Well, I think eventually it comes down to what do we know by the word, what do we mean by the word know, and so what sort of certainty do we have to apply to that word before we can say we know something?
Yeah, well, I mean, I have my thoughts on what I mean when I say I know something, but does anyone else want to weigh in on this first?
Yeah, so obviously there's things that we can say we know, okay, that are tangible, that are obviously empirically verifiable, but there are other things we may not be able to know just by the limits of our own brain construct. I mean, there's colors we can't even see, for example, like ultraviolet. Beyond the ultraviolet spectrum we can't see, and there's pitches we can't hear. How do we know they're there beyond what are the objects that we use to capture these particular ranges? Can be used to find them. I mean, that's where we have to kind of test and experiment, and that's where we have science to ultimately verify those things. And I guess the specifics of all those things can be reproduced in a lab of some sort. We can, for example, in electronics, you can, Ohm's law works, even though you can't see, okay, what you're seeing. How do you really know that what you're working with is really there or whatnot, or how do you, apart from just being able to test and make it work, that's something we have to grapple with when we studied electronics at university. But this is my take on it. Essentially, it's just empiric. It's an empirical stance. That's what I use to recognize what it is that is known to me, and what it means to know in general.
So essentially, what you just said is something you can observe.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I would agree with that.
Hang on for a second. Observe and test. So you have to be able to somehow test and reproduce results based on what it is that you apparently know.
So you can observe your result is reproducible. Right.
Like we can say that human beings in general can see the color blue, and the way we know that is simply by testing, by recreating. We know that the spectrum is recreated in frequencies, and we have objects that recreate those frequencies and generate what we know as blue, and associate that same blueness with, say, the sky. And if we show somebody a generated blue and then have them point to the sky and see if that color matches, then we know that is indeed blue that we're seeing, and we're on the same page.
But how do you know that we perceive the same blue?
Because you can generate blue via a spectrum. It's science. If you've ever used an oscilloscope, like I said, because science knows that colors can be generated via frequencies. They're frequencies. If you take an oscilloscope,
you're not answering my question, Daniel.
I'm trying to. So if you take if
what you're doing is you're describing the science, but how do you know?
Well, you have to you have to describe it in order to answer your question. So you're saying, how do we know it's blue? Because we know that the color blue is something that the word blue. Let's take it from this angle, I guess. The word blue is generally used by people to describe something within a certain frequency band.
Sorry about the noise there.
Yeah, so we can reproduce that frequency band and generate what we've defined to be blue, and we would ask somebody to identify that frequency band, and also where we know the frequency band is present in nature, point to it, like for instance the sky, and verify that the frequency band you're looking at is the same as the frequency band in the sky. We just call that frequency band blue. That's all it is, and we can actually account for that somehow. using technology.
You're not tackling what I said, though.
I think I did, but that's...
How do I know that I perceive blue the same way as you do?
Because we can verify it. That's exactly right. That's correct. Thank you. That's it. It's very simple. We're making this more complex than it needs to be.
Well, okay. Now, I think I know what Yuri is talking about. Like, for example, you have some people who may be colorblind, unable to see certain ranges of color.
That's right, but that's got to do with the physical structure of their brain. It may be different, and that. Yeah. But again, that can still be verified. Okay, because they may see frequencies differently, but they ultimately, if you take people who have the same brain mechanisms generating similar mismatches in color, they'll still say to each other, "Oh yeah, we're seeing the same color because we're both colorblind." So we're seeing that.
They'll still say
that
blue
frequency
too.
will always be the same, right? Exactly. That frequency will always be the same. It never changes, but to them, it may be perceived as a different shade
or different. I have a different question about this, though. I think that. To me, what you said makes sense, but what I want to know is, in the realm of when we're talking about hallucinations and things, that's sensory experience. Right. Are you saying that is then truth? Are you saying that that's not? If I perceive God through my sensory, impressions, then God does in fact. I could say I have knowledge of God.
Well, that all depends on if you can recreate that experience in other people, which has been done. If you've known the God experiments, where they take people and strobe their temporal lobe with electromagnetic devices and generate
right, yeah, and that's where I would disagree with you.
Okay.
I mean, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but what I'm saying is, to me, sensory or empiricism can't be the only criteria. There has to be. I agree in part with empiricism, but the issue becomes when you start talking about hallucinations, because there are people who have hallucinations that describe the same experiences, the same areas in their brain are being lit up, and the truth of the matter is, if you think that you can fly and you walk off a cliff, you're a dead man. That's the reality.
No. Yeah, because you're going to jump off a cliff. Guess what's going to happen? You're going to go smash.
So empiricism has to contend with objective reality. It can't just be a sensory experience. Sensory experience. You've already said testing it, which again is an important part of it, but I don't think it's just strictly the sensory experience that validates something. It has to be, retesting it and making sure that it involves this thing we call objective reality.
Okay.
Okay, I mean that's pretty much where I was at with this. So to me, it's not just empiricism, and it can't be. It has to contend with reality, with the objective.
Well, that's what empiricism attempts to do, is that it takes the reality. Okay, even in neuroscience, for example, all of these things you're telling me about hallucinations and not being, they're mutually exclusive, I guess, as what you're saying, to get what your point is clearly. Are you saying that objective reality is mutually exclusive with hallucinations? Is that what it is?
Is it mutually exclusive? No. Well, actually, no, I'm not saying that. No. So I wouldn't say that it's mutually exclusive from it. It might be based on reality, but it's clear that when someone hallucinates, despite the fact that they're having sensory impressions.
So there's no duality in what you're saying, essentially. If you're saying it's not mutually exclusive, then there's no duality. Which kind of
I might be misunderstanding what you're saying is mutually exclusive. Are you saying that the hallucinations are mutually exclusive from reality?
Correct.
No.
Okay, so then what do you mean by objective reality being, I guess, exclusive from empiricism? I don't get it.
It's because we have for certain what we know to be true, which is that we can have sensory impressions that we consider false. That is true. You can have a sensory impression, and that sensory impression not reality. We have examples of that.
Well, yeah, because one's brain is unable to interpret or this differentiate between what is real and what is not real, and that's got more to do with brain experiences, the way you're raised, the belief instilled in you. That's all still that's all still data being burnt into your neurons. That's still physical.
Okay.
And that data is corrupting your brain like a virus. So it's still ultimately empirically verifiable that you can have bad ideas affect your brain and generate these delusions in your head that you think that these experiences you're having are in fact one thing when they're really not in reality.
Okay, so I don't think we disagree then. I think I was clarifying when you originally talked about empiricism, you kind of pigeonholed it to sensory imagery, and it can't just be sensory.
Don't generally limit themselves to describing things in this way. I think it's just more a misunderstanding of what empiricism is.
Okay.
Empiricism takes the physical, obviously the physical world, looks at what the different physical states of, say, a brain, and I guess takes those physical states as being a product not just of the biology but also of the experiences, and those experiences include being exposed to knowledge, which may lead you to delude yourself into thinking that seeing God is really what it is, that's seeing God. But in fact, in the reality, there's no empirically testable way to verify that. So therefore, the likelihood of it being true is very low. And that's how an empiricist would think.
All right, so you don't think that then just because someone has the sense of God, that they have knowledge of God in reality?
I do not. That's correct.
Okay, all right, then we're on the same page. I agree.
So, you guys, do you think there's a difference between noumenon and phenomenon?
Noumena and phenomena?
Noumenon and phenomenon.
I think it's just the plural and singular.
Right.
No. N-O-U.
No. What I'm saying is the way that you guys are saying it, noumena and phenomena and noumenon and phenomenon is just the singular and plural of each other. Never mind.
So it's an old. It can't, I think, develop the word. So
right,
noumenon.
Yeah, the phenomenology of the spirit. That's his book. Okay, go on.
Well, phenomenon was basically. Is basically through phenomena, and noumenon is things as they really are. So basically, when I sit on a chair or a couch, I can only experience it through my butt or whatever, but
that's a phenomenological.
It's actually quite physically different.
Yeah, that's actually a phenomenology. That's phenomenology. So he's the guy. He's the father of that. So he would see things like that, but seeing things in that perspective is actually just being like a child of his time. He came on to this idea, and it kind of helped to develop this dialectic, okay, which eventually, it can be applied to art, for example. It's a good way to kind of describe art, but it's limited because really science has already kind of addressed these phenomena for what they really are, and it's really essentially killed off what Kant really did. But Kant did lead the way. He gave people tools with which to analyze in a dialectic fashion these two different things, and that was great.
Well,
but
I don't see
ultimately,
how Kant is.
I
don't think how Kant has killed off the concept of noumena.
Yes, because those noumena can now be explained in physical terms by science.
Hold on. So that if they can't be explained, I don't think we can explain them completely, but we can explain them to some degree.
Right, they're either material or they're quanta. So now
it will always be the explanation through phenomena will be always incomplete.
I think that this kind of reminds me of a conversation I heard. Who was it? Pinker or not? Steven Pinker. Oh, gee, I'm forgetting.
Singer.
Yes, thank you.
Somebody just entered the call.
He pretty much said that philosophy is dead, and we discussed this whole idea.
Yeah.
It's Poffo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey there, Poffo. How you doing?
Oh man.
Oh, go ahead.
It's been a crazy day. I've been involved in like so many different debates and discussions right now. It's insane.
I thought y'all couldn't hear me for a second. I'm like.
I heard you, WSD. Yeah, but those guys were talking. Yeah, Poffo, what happened is we actually were already doing a podcast, and the guys are talking about what we can know. It's kind of an interesting thing about what's sensory experience and what things can we test by science, and it's kind of interesting. Earlier they were debating the color blue.
It sounds kind of irrelevant and frivolous to me, but that's just my take on it. What's going on with Danny? I thought Daniel was going to be.
Yeah, Daniel. Yeah, Daniel is here. Yeah, he's here.
Hey, Daniel, how's it going?
What's going on, Poffo?
Nice to meet you, man. Is that you? And I see you. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna turn off my camera so it doesn't use up bandwidth.
Yeah.
I just wanted to address that last point I was trying to make. So essentially, you know, they were talking about how philosophy is dead because we don't need to use terms like noumena anymore or phenomena. Use other words in science to describe something similar but more concretely defined by the experiments that we've done to verify the states or the qualities or the, I guess, the attributes of certain things. So, but definitely, you know, this was an earlier way of doing science, essentially, and that's what Kant was credited for. So it's not like we just don't use this language anymore, but we're still
don't use this language, but the concept's still there.
Yes, correct. That's what I meant to say. Yes, that's it.
So, in other words, we can experience stuff, and we can get a good sense of how reality or noumenon works. But ultimately, what we experience and what we know is always a reflection of the noumenon, because I don't think we have or reality, if you prefer.
Right. Which scientists would probably call objectivity or objective reality.
Yeah. So, in other words, we're always looking at things through a reflection.
Right.
WSD, this is unrelated, but I can hear all your background noise, and I can hear you laughing. And stuff,
sorry about that.
Hit your microphone, hit mute if you're talking to somebody else.
Sorry about that. I thought it was muted. Sorry.
It's all right. We're basically talking about the kind of brain in the jar scenario that, like, you know, we only know what our brain perceives and reinterprets and tells us. It's like we can't have a direct sensory experience. Is that the concept here?
I think the brain in the jar is even one step further away. You know, that's solipsism gone mad. So basically, you know, I can't argue my way out of being a brain in a jar, but I don't think I am one.
Yeah, and you were talking about Kant, right?
Kant,
philosopher Kant. Okay. My take on it is all we can do at this point is trust our senses, and the sensory experience is real enough because there are consequences. There are psychological, physical, experiential consequences. So even if we're all in a matrix, even if we can't trust anything, we're still beholden to that matrix. So, like, sort of philosophizing and theorizing about it is irrelevant because we're all trapped in it until someone like Neo or Jesus or whoever comes along and says, reality is all an illusion, and here's the red pill and the blue pill. Here's the red pill that will show you the truth. Then we can actually do something about it. But until then, this is just navel gazing.
Right. I like that idea. I like that way of putting it.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. Sorry, carry on.
Oh, yeah. And what I wanted to say is whenever this topic of, like, the Matrix come up, what I like to point out is, let's say that we all are all brains in a vat somehow, or that we are all just, humans that are plugged into the Matrix. Then that would be the reality of it, is that we were trapped in a Matrix. That would be our reality. We just wouldn't know it, but it would be the reality nonetheless.
Yeah, my point is that until we have someone to liberate us from this, all we can do is trust our senses. And the greater, I think, WSD, you got a lot of background noise, man. Like, chill out. Whatever you're doing, just sit still for a minute.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. Sorry.
The point is that, like, in this reality, whether it's a hologram, an illusion, or whatever, there is real pain and suffering. There are, living organisms. There are sentient beings who are being enslaved, who are being persecuted or being oppressed, human and non-human animals. And I say that the more pertinent, the overarching superseding priority should be to minimize suffering, to help others who are in need. And I mean, these subjects are fascinating to discuss, but my point is, damn, man, you're gonna make me pull a George on you and start yelling.
Yeah, whose phone was that?
That was my phone.
I don't have an iPhone, so you know better than that.
No, I don't care, but it just picks up everything. And speaking of, can you guys hear my fan at all? Is my fan do you hear like a?
No, it's cool. I don't hear nothing.
All right, I'm holding my mic, so hopefully
Yeah, I think I'm not hearing any weird sounds except the occasional weirdness. So yeah, so like here, since Poffo was able to join us finally, how about we could just in the middle of a podcast we could just change topics so that Poffo and Danny could have their talk that they were wanting to.
Can I add one final bit to this?
Yeah, sure.
Because I am interested in the reaction because I don't.
Is that Quayd? I didn't know he was here. What's up, man?
Yep. How's it going? So, because to me, there is another level that you need for knowledge. So, it could be, so for instance, I can't remember who asked at this point, but it was what is the capital of Poland? You said.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't have the experience of Poland. I'm imagining that's the reason you were saying that, correct?
I've never been there.
Right. And so you don't have that to go off of in terms of empiricism. But what you do have is an argument. You have an argument that you're setting up knowing that experts have been there and experienced it. And so you're building that knowledge not based off of your own experience of Poland, but on the argument or the logic that's behind it.
Right, that's inductive reasoning. I'm sorry, inductive.
No, yeah. Right, exactly, yes.
There's all sorts of little things like Poland. Well, the capital of Poland is always changing. There's river flowing through it. You never step into the same Warsaw twice, sort of thing. It's a definitional matter. That's number two. And the thing is, if you had somebody who was actually traveling in the correct direction, approaching the speed of light, he might think it's Krakow.
Right.
So
yeah, it's all relative. I guess the point Yuri's trying to make is everything is relative, and
I'm not arguing for relativism. I really don't believe in that. Because that's sort of vaguely postmodernistic, and
whatever you want to call it. The reality is subjective.
Reality is subjective, yeah. So and that's the whole point of agnosticism. You can never be quite sure.
But can I make a point really quick? And before we make that transition, the people who generally tend to say that reality is subjective, that things are relative, are people who are probably generally trying to defend some action or behavior or thought process, and so their entire sort of philosophy ends up becoming this wishy-washy, nebulous thing. It's the people who are who are generally standing for something and fighting for something and believe wholeheartedly in something that say that morality, that ethics, that these things are not just gray, they're black and white, that there is certain absolute truths. What I'm trying to say is it's always the moral relativists and the people who have actions and behaviors that they're trying to justify that will adopt these attitudes. And yeah, of course we could say we don't know anything 100% for sure. I don't know. I have to take the scientist's word for it when it comes to certain forces of nature and things like that. But again, like it usually stems from kind of a form of deflection, trying to lay everything into this nebulous category, so that you can't actually make a case or argue for something objectively, because everything becomes subjective.
Well, that's why I was making that point. Based off of what you said, you were talking about how you kind of have to take the word of scientists or whatever, and that's why I was saying that is it can't just be empiricism or it can't just be sensory, because if say for instance a Christian hears that, they're going to be like, well, I experience God on a daily basis, and I have never done a test in a lab. And so it's really based off of arguments. It's based off of sensory impressions as well, but it has to be informed by logic, and it has to be informed by good arguments.
Well, here's the thing. We can take neuroscience and kind of, neuroscientific examples of people with brain damage who've had certain parts of their brain damaged that now no longer can experience pleasure or no longer can, let's say, enjoy music, no longer see images, no longer see their mother as their mother. And, they have the Oedipus complex cases.
I've actually seen that documentary on that. It was a special guy that's getting...
They don't recognize their own parts of the body.
Yeah, correct. So, these people who are saying that they've seen God, they're really, I wish that they could see that their experiences are a result of perhaps physical states of their brain. that are probably wired in a very delicate, sensitive, or overtly or prone to overstimulation. Okay, and that's why they see these things, and they're so intense an experience that they get so emotionally involved and vested in these experiences that they think that they're really seeing God.
I tend to say your experiences are real. Everything you've experienced is real. I just doubt the interpretation of that experience, because you're predisposed because of your environment, because of your upbringing, because of whatever indoctrination you've undergone, and so you end up sort of how you reinterpret or how you interpret your reality is what defines that. But like, I never doubt a person's experience. I always try to know, I'm sure that was real. But let's talk about the interpretation. Let's talk about like what the actual source was.
Right. Yeah, I agree with Poffo on that. Me and him I guess we're on the same page there.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page when it comes to religion and delusional thinking.
Right.
But end of the day, things like morality, I think to a good sense of it, a lot of it is just simply our perception of right and wrong, or sort of, for example, we're discussing that, it's wrong to eat or cause pain or whatever.
Right.
And my mirror neurons fire. I get that. But I can also think about it and just think about, from a free will point of view, it makes a mockery of morality. If you think about it logically.
You're talking about free will?
I would say that the majority in this case, when it comes to reality, when it comes to objective reality, the majority is what wins. The majority of our perceptions take a huge swath of people, and everything that everyone that's experiencing water is wet and fire is hot, and up is up and down is down, whatever you want to call it. Specifically, when it comes to morality, whatever is healthy, whatever is pleasure-inducing, and whatever is causing pain and causing chaos and destruction of the body or destruction of the mind, we can generally agree on these things because the majority rules. That's what I'm trying to say.
So, in other words,
determine reality is by numbers.
But then again, that's not a terribly good argument. So the majority wins.
If you give me a better no, and I don't mean like groups of people. I mean universally, we are all subject to gravity, so to speak. Universally, we all need to breathe air. We all need food and water, these kind of things. So universally, I mean, I'm the first one to say that eventually we'll actually transcend these limitations. But what I'm saying is, for right now, we're all subject to these things. If I come to your house and I kick you in the face, you're going to feel it. It's going to hurt. Generally, that's across the board for everybody. That's what I'm saying. If I'm kind to you, if we talk and we have a nice meal, and you're going to generally see me as a benevolent person, and things that are pleasurable, things that are healthy, things that are good for us are generally the same as things that are bad for us. I've had friends who have done enormous amounts of drugs and just ruined their lives, ruined their bodies over it. But while they were doing it, you might not know. It could be all internal. So, like,
I'm not quite
certain people.
Sure what your point is here.
My point is that biology is different for different people, so that it'll affect them differently. You might not see the consequences, the results right away, but essentially, universally across the board, we are subject to the same physical restraints, the same physical phenomena.
But then, what's this got to do with morality?
We were talking about just that everything is subjective, and perception.
No, I'm not saying when I say subjective, everything is sort of seen through phenomena. I'm not saying, just because someone in Outer Mongolia has a particular point of view and that mine is different. I don't mean that subjectiveness. I mean literally everything more of a scientific subjectiveness. Everything we observe is either through a machine or through our eyes or ears or something like that.
Right. Generally, pain is the same experience for most people. And generally,
we all live in a physical world. We all live in a very physical, material world. So when it comes to morality, we're sort of basically saying some particular arrangements of material are moral, and some particular arrangements of material are immoral, which to me doesn't
because
make
I mean, whatever you want to call it, we've been through this many times before, Yuri, but whatever you want to call it, some things are harmful and some things are helpful. That's all. Some things are healthy for the organism and some things are damaging.
Yes,
that's how you determine it.
You're espousing a form of dualism. I think when we think, so people who don't have a belief in free will would tend to move to a more of a monist point of view.
I mean, what, in terms of sensory perception or in terms of ethical and moral standards?
In terms of worldviews.
Again, I'm trying to say that consequences cause and effect, and the consequences of our actions generally determine what is ethical and what is moral, whether something is harmful or helpful.
But then again, what's happened is the physical world has determined what passes for morals for you and what passes for morals for me. I didn't choose them. You don't choose yours.
This reality, yeah, like the reality we're born into. We're sort of trapped in the parameters of this reality. Is that what you mean?
So what it is, here we have a couple of memes fighting each other, trying to win.
Yeah, I guess like there's conflict because people have different perspectives, different life experiences, and different points of view. But I try to take on all perspectives and look. I try to continuously shift my my point of view so that I can see from all sides to get the most.
But you're also trying to shift my point of view as well.
Actually, I'm not. I'm just.
You're not. You think I shouldn't be? You're okay with me eating meat?
What's that?
You're okay with me eating meat?
Well, we haven't even started talking about this yet.
I know, but
is that what you guys are talking about right now?
Yeah, see, this always happens. Whenever these guys are together, this tends to happen, see. And I understand and agree with everything that Poffo is saying. Poffo is describing, that we're biological organisms. We feel pleasure and we feel pain. And that commonality allows us to establish a basis of ethics or morality. And I think that's what most of us go by. Now,
on topic, but how do we know that how do we know our morality is right?
Yuri, the question is not. Hold on, excuse me for a second. Yuri, let me just get this out really quick. Yuri, the question is not about morality and what's right and wrong. The only difference between you and I is you're not applying the same standards to non-human animals that you apply to yourself. I apply the same standards that I apply to myself to all of life, to all sentient life, and you're just not you're not widening your circle of compassion to include those animals.
I'm not exactly sure I'm a pacifist either.
Okay, but I'm just saying that, like, the question is not about determining morality. It's about you. It's about the relatability of yourself to other non-human animals. That you're not making the same correlations that I'm making. That's all.
Can I step in just for a second? Because I want to. So Poffo says that you're not applying the principle, right? There's a principle here. And you're just not applying it consistently, right? So,
is that it? So,
yeah. Why does that matter?
Is that a question?
Yeah. Why does it matter that you don't apply a principle
so why does it matter? Sure. So why does it matter in a kind of a universal sense? Because we're not alone in this experience, and the idea is, as I said before, like certain things are helpful and life-affirming, and certain things are destructive and chaotic. And right now, to consume meat, eggs, and dairy is the most unhealthy thing that we can do for the human body.
According to the sun.
According to science,
I don't agree with that
studies
either.
and statistics and all of the.
There's no scientific consensus by dietitians.
Right. Actually, I would actually have to step in and say yes. There's no scientific consensus on that, actually.
And I would just say that you guys haven't been exposed to it yet. I would say you're not just not.
Well, you can want to show some sources. That'd be great.
Yeah. If you have sources,
I've actually been doing that.
I don't have sources that I have like offhand. I could pull out my ass right now because I didn't actually come on to talk about this stuff, but. If you just
do
the research,
this too, and he showed his like on
end of the day, bullshit.
Hold on, I can't hear everybody.
Sorry, just real quick, I have to go because I have to meet another friend. But I really wish I could have this conversation. So I hope you guys continue this conversation another day.
Right,
I'll be on next week. Yeah, thanks guys. I'll be on next week if you call me. All right.
Yeah, see, and guys, this is a very interesting conversation. In fact, we're covering multiple different topics here because first we started talking about what we can know and how do we know things and the scientific method and stuff like that. But then it got into, I feel like Yuri kind of steered it in the direction of about morality and about the animals actually. And so Poffo and Yuri...
Poffo informed. He wanted to talk about it. But then, going, my question is to somebody who's vegan, why not go one step further and why not sort of take on some form of Jainism?
Because that would be absolutist and extreme and unnecessary. Like that's a form of.
But I'm trying to tell. But I'll explain to you. Hold on. So how do you know that's absolute?
I'm not just giving you an opinion. I'm trying to finish the sentence. I'm trying to say.
Poffo, Yuri, please let Poffo finish.
Okay.
That it's not just an arbitrary opinion. It's the fact that just from our sheer size and scale, we will accidentally step on bugs. We will consume microorganisms just because of how our position, our scale. So it's unreasonable and it's obsessive and unnecessary to take it to that extreme when there are life forms and organisms that we absolutely can avoid harming, and we know are suffering excruciating amounts of pain, and we know the environmental consequences, we know the health consequences. So it's as far the definition of veganism is as far as is practical, as far as you're able. It's right. It's not an absolute extremist philosophy that applies on every scale, on the micro and the macro, because we don't live on the micro scale. We live in this middle world in between the micro and the macro. So
I
we're
understand
just,
that, Poffo.
How do we know?
And honestly, this is just a diversion because you're on the defensive, Yuri, and I never once attacked you.
I'm asking you a question.
But your question.
And I would say I'm on the defensive because you're on the attack.
I'm not attacking anybody. I came on here.
Yeah, Poffo is never attacking you, Yuri, and you keep bringing up other things that are distracting. Like he's trying to respond to one thing, and then you interrupt with something else. You know,
this is called moving the goalposts. It's a fallacy. You don't need to be on the defense. I'm not accusing you or attacking you of anything. If you ask me a question, I'll answer you. But I wasn't even prepared to talk about veganism on this episode.
Yeah.
But if you want to talk about it, we can. But the whole point is what I said is the standards that you apply to yourself and to other humans and to your closest relatives and people in your immediate circle, you're not applying to other life forms. That's the only difference between you and me. If you apply it to other life forms... Do you mind if I say
something about this real quick, guys? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Because I think it's that we're attempting to really be consistent with our morals and our ethics on both sides, both Poffo and Yuri. Okay, that's what I noticed. I think that you're both aiming to really met out a lot of your concerns about morality or whatnot in your own ways. But I think that my take on it is I agree with both sides in certain ways. Okay, but I try not to allocate too many unnecessary attentional resources to every little thing, because if I did, I would never get anywhere. I mean, like a Jain, I couldn't live my life as a Jain, for example, because I just don't have the time to be responsible or to worry about what I'm doing.
Daniel, excuse me, Daniel. That's not even on the table. No one ever advocating being a Jainist.
No. I'm actually saying I'm just addressing what Yuri's point was. Yuri actually brought up, so why not be a Jain? I'm just giving my take on why I wouldn't be a Jain. I'm kind of periwinkling off of your take on it.
That's not even the issue though. Veganism is not Jainism. And people will go.
No. I understand that. I'm not attacking it. I'm just saying, my take is that I'm not going to try to attempt to be perfect in everything that I do. It's just not practical.
I know. I heard your last podcast. I thought it was fascinating. Your take on things. I'd like to get to that, but I do want to mention one thing, just sort of maybe anecdotal or just a reference from my past. Before I went vegan, I used to say I'll probably end up being vegetarian, because I love animals, because I don't want to contribute to the harm and the suffering. But I'll probably never be vegan because it's too tedious. I wouldn't want to have to read all the ingredients. I wouldn't want to have to worry about where everything is coming from and where it's sourced. And now as a vegan, I reckon, because I've made this transition and I've lived this lifestyle for a period of time, I recognize how easy and how simple it is. From this perspective where I am right now, it's the easiest thing I've ever done. From that perspective where I was, a few years ago, I didn't understand that that everything that was involved, that because of food allergies, it's even written on the packages and the ingredients, contains milk, contains, whatever, contains eggs, and it's extremely easy. So I would just, my point, I would just like to make a small point, Daniel, is that your perception that this may be a pursuit of perfection may be a misperception stemming from where you are.
Oh, no, actually, I'm not. No, actually, if anything, I would more apply that statement towards Yuri. I think he's trying too hard. You think you're more practical approach. I would say that he's too hard. I wouldn't.
Really, the argument will always go to the extreme when you're trying to defend the position that you've already predetermined. That you're going to be adamant about. When you're adamant about something, you go to the extreme to try and discredit the other person's position, and that's all this is. I hear this all day long, constantly about.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
About this? What about the bugs? What about the mice that are killed when during the harvest? What about this? What about that? You're gonna go to the Inuit Eskimos and get them to go vegan. What about the Native Americans?
I'm actually in agreement with you, Poffo. That's all I'm saying. I actually think you have a practical.
To make these extremes.
Yeah. I think you guys are actually in agreement on that. Actually, yeah. Right. Danny understands that veganism isn't about being perfect and making sure we never cause any harm. I mean, personally, I would love to be that perfect and never cause any harm to anything. But I understand it's not achievable for most people. Probably not anyone. Yeah, but so that's what it's about. As practice,
it's in the definition as far as is practical, and possible that we seek to. Abstain from anything that any exploitation or use or abuse of animals. That's all it is. But and that's a good segue to the anti-natalism thing, because I think that Daniel, you've said multiple times that you see that as a standard, as an ideal of perfection that you no longer wish to burden yourself with. Is that correct?
So, I think it's just not practical for me to. Go ahead, Yuri. Go ahead, Yuri.
So and again, so just getting back to how we know things. So how do we know that there is some standard, some perfection? I'm just sort of listening to this. I'm fairly certain I have a will or a want or a desire, and some people have this desire to be vegan. That's fine by me. Some people have this desire to eat nothing but meat. That's okay by me too. But So the vague topic of this discussion is, how do we know that what we're doing is right?
Yuri, very simply, if you don't want it done to you, don't do it to someone else. It's the golden rule.
How do we know that's right?
If you wouldn't want your teeth ground down and your tail cut off and your beak sliced off, if you wouldn't want to be crammed into a battery cage, if you wouldn't want to be sexually violated and artificially inseminated over and over and over, if you wouldn't want it
do one to others as you want one done to you, basically.
Exactly. That's the standard.
As you can. I would throw in as best as you can with the golden rule, because again, yes, the golden rule is a great thing, but the practicality of it is kind of limited. You have to address that as well. You can't always be the perfect golden rule
once you recognize
master.
that animal agriculture
Daniel,
is unnecessary.
how do you know that golden rule is right? Or
I'm not going to take that claim.
I have a response to what Yuri just said. Yuri, why?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Yuri, why do you care whether or not it's right? Because you are the very guy who has repeatedly, when we've had these talks, you refuse to say that anything is wrong or right, because you like to act like that nothing is wrong or right. So why do you even care whether the golden rule is right?
Philosophically, that's what I think. And
I think he cares about what's right or wrong, but I think he doesn't like to label it
in terms of that kind of duality.
That's very
especially if you don't believe in free will.
I think he cares just as much as the rest of us about what's right and wrong as it affects him. He's more of a utilitarian in that sense, but he doesn't like to label it that way. He doesn't like to use the moral language because that creates an imposition that he's rejected, because he's in rebellion against Christian.
Please don't put what I think in.
If I'm wrong, then correct me. I've listened to several of your podcasts, so if I'm wrong, go ahead and correct me.
But how do you know what I think is right or wrong if I think anything's right or wrong?
I know you're an amoralist, so you choose to say that nothing is right or wrong. It's just whatever makes you feel good, whatever you choose to do, whatever has a utilitarian purpose to you. Like, as I said, I've listened.
What makes me feel good?
Okay.
It's basically the whole concept makes no sense to me.
Okay.
So you're unable to experience pleasure? I don't know. Let me check a quick question.
I can experience pleasure. I can experience pain. Give you a bit of background. My son died 10 years ago. I know what pain is.
Okay, so then what would you rather have more of, pain or pleasure? Just let's start there. I mean,
okay, I'll answer a slightly different question. Okay. In having sort of seen my son die, okay, I've learned not to chase pain or pleasure.
Okay.
Learn not to chase. What'd you say? What was the
okay,
word?
I kind of see that. I see that. I get. Okay, all right. So you've learned not to.
What was the word though? He said not to
chase. Pain or pleasure. Okay, all right. So,
so it's a Buddhist philosophy of being equanimity. It's like equanimity. Like
there you go. Interesting.
You're like stoic about it. Well, this is in response to pain. So your own response to pain is evidence and proof that pain is undesirable for you and for the vast majority of organisms.
Again, Poffo, did you just be careful about putting your emotions on other people? I can remember walking home from my son's grave one day and actually thanking my son for his death because I've never experienced such intense feelings. So, I think, Chandler, take control, please.
Yeah, what I would like to say is I would like us to move away from this little debate that Yuri and Poffo are having and instead have Danny and Poffo talk about what they wanted to talk about, because that was what I was originally hoping for. Not that these other things aren't worth exploring, though. That has been great. Just to review for people who are listening to this, a few weeks ago, Daniel and Trick Slattery had a talk about anti-natalism and the different arguments for or against that. And so Poffo listened to that, and he had some things to say. So maybe we could transition to that discussion. How does that sound, guys?
I'm fine with that. But before we move forward,
cool
I mean,
with that.
my own convictions, my own emotions compel me to extend my condolences to Yuri for his loss and for whatever he experienced and what he went through. I can't imagine how difficult that must have been. And I hope that he is. Has been able to work this stuff out and talked about it with a therapist.
Fine, but then again, we're just about to have this anti-natalism discussion.
Yeah.
I'm going to be listening to somebody who's lost a child, and I am going to be. So you can imagine where I'm going to be on this one. I'll try and stay quiet.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, anyway, as I said, I'm truly sorry for your loss.
Same here, Yuri. Please, I couldn't imagine the pain you went through, man. That's tough. My son is 4 years old. He's got autism, and oh my goodness, man, he kind of gave me a lump in my throat, dude. Sorry.
Yeah, and my son, he had a severe epilepsy, and so basically, I know what pain looks like.
Right.
And he also had a lot of autistic tendencies.
And can I say something very, very simply put? This is why Chandler and I are against reproduction for humans, are against procreation, because things like this are inevitable. Things like this will happen. And I understand your position, Daniel, that things like this might not happen, or we might make the best of the situations. But at the same time, there will always be a measure of pain and suffering, and that's like, as the argument went back and forth, I remember the discussion. It's non-consensual on the part of the unborn, and this is why we feel it to be a selfish thing to have children in this time period, in this day and age, in this society as it is today, with things as bad as they are.
Excuse my sleep, but fuck that. I ain't having no damn children. Too much work.
Yeah, and I second what Poffo is saying there. There's so much to it, but yeah, I'll let you guys hash this out.
All right. I mean, there's 3 things, 3 points of contention. One is that the child, one of the basis for justifying antinatalism is, one, a child cannot give consent for being brought into the world. Therefore, you are forcing a child into being in that sense. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I remember in the last podcast listening, and I felt that it got too sort of convoluted and fuddled with semantics, where it could have been much simpler.
Let's try to focus on this particular. I think let's try to focus.
I do. I'll go through all of them, all the arguments, but I would like to keep it as simple as possible, because I think that the meanings get lost in the words sometimes. So.
Right. This is a priori. I want to call it a priori intent. Okay, which really can't exist. Yes, we didn't give permission, or we didn't get permission, but we can't get that permission. That's just the way the world works. That's how a child is created, without giving it permission. I can't do anything about that. But you also said another thing to tail off of that, is that it's a selfish thing, and selfishness. Yes, I will gladly give you that. It is selfish, but selfish for the right reasons. I think that selfish in the sense that I want to try to raise a child that can make this world a better place. So it's not that it's a bad thing.
You recognize these are your wishes, these are your desires, these are your hopes, your intentions, and they have nothing to do with that child in terms of its own sense of volition. You're literally imposing your ideal onto them. As long as
just like my mother didn't give me permission. I didn't give her my permission to have me, but I'm not going to hold it against her either. So it can't be
what religion we're raised with, what country we're born into, what name we're given, all these things, everything about the process of creating a new life. What I'm trying to say is there will never be a non-selfish reason to reproduce.
I don't disagree with that, but I don't think that necessarily gives antinatalism the thumbs up in my book. That's let me
take a different perspective for a second. Would you like to know why I am an antinatalist? I personally had a scare. I thought I got my girlfriend pregnant. I was in the waiting room, and my life was flashing before my eyes, and I was stressing out. And when she came out, she was like, "Oh, it's fine. I'm not pregnant." The relief, the weight just lifted, and I said to myself then, I was 18, and I said to myself, I will never, ever experience this again. I'm not ready for this. I don't think I'll ever be ready for this. It's too much of a burden. It's too much of a responsibility. And I made that choice. I made a choice then. It was in my late 20s that I actually got a vasectomy. But it was when I was 18, I decided, and I've only felt stronger about it as I've gotten older. But one of the most important points I'm trying to make is that I don't think that I'll ever be a responsible enough parent. I don't think I'll ever be a good enough parent. I don't think this world will ever be good enough for what I believe my child will deserve. And that's it. So these are me just being rational and logical about it, saying that it's my own deficiencies, my own inadequacies that motivated this. And what I say is that other people they do not take this into consideration. They don't take into consideration their emotional, financial, psychological stability, all of the things.
Hey, Poffo, something's going on with your audio. I think, I'm not hearing you. It sounds like you're further away, so I don't know what's.
How's this?
Let's see.
It's still a little low.
Yeah.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
That's perfect. Yeah.
You know what the problem is? My mic is still receiving on my laptop instead of on my earbuds. So I guess I have to just talk over into the mic on the laptop. But then I was worried that the fan might interfere. Okay. All I was saying was that I don't feel like I'll ever be a good enough parent. I don't think that this world is in a state that I would, knowing everything that I know, that I would ever want to raise a child in this world. I would never want the responsibility, and I don't think I'll ever be responsible enough. I don't think I'll ever be a good enough parent. I care more about my potential child. I care more about them and their experience, and that's why I've chosen to not have children. So that's just my personal sentiments about it.
Okay, yeah, so it's a personal sentiment, and I get that. I can respect that if you want not to have a kid. My only concern is if I personally went there to say something like that of myself, I'd be pretty much telling myself that I'm incapable of being that, and I just can't do that because I don't want to set an example that says, you know what, I admit to myself that I'm not good at this, and I'm going to give up on it. I'm just going to put it in the side burner and never pursue it, and never try to make it better, and never try to change it.
I remember your statements about it in the last episode, and that's a noble attitude to take if you're talking about sports, some kind of creative project, building something, starting a business, a relationship. But to me, it's a whole nother ball field when you're talking about creating a life.
Different. Yeah,
it's so much more. It's so much more. It's something to take much more seriously, and I can understand that the idea of the challenge, that you're not going to shy away from challenge. But one other point, I guess I'm probably playing devil's advocate to myself here, but I also struggle with anxiety and depression, and so again, it adds to the idea that I have enough trouble just trying to take care of myself. Why would I want the added responsibility and burden of having a life, creating a life on my own? I am 100%. I'm 100% for adoption, right. and raising children. I'm not against raising children. I'm against creating more children, more life right now with things as they are. And that was another big point. I'm specifically talking about the state of the world as it is right now. With the state of the world as it is, that is the greatest motivating factor. Looking at reality.
In an ideal world, of course, reproduction would not be a negative thing, wouldn't be immoral. But right now, I think that it's selfish and immoral because of the state of our cultures, of our societies. Right, and you're saying that it's not. Here's the thing, though: if everyone took your position, we'd wipe ourselves out.
Okay, that's another. That's a good.
Yeah, but at the same time, this society is essentially shit. But I wouldn't.
I agree.
That's why.
I agree, WST.
Yeah.
Then we should just kill ourselves.
No, Daniel, I want to address that. I've heard all these. I've heard people pose these questions to Trick as well in my groups. No, I am not anti-life. I'm actually a biopantheist, so I honor and respect life more than anyone. This is a philosophy and an outlook, a perspective that I believe we need more of in this life, because obviously somewhere somebody is still going to be screwing and somebody's still going to be irresponsible and someone's going to still have kids. The human race is not going to die out because
even though they can't take care of it. But yeah.
I'm trying to say that somebody's going to end up reproducing. There's going to still be procreation. The point is, this is a shift where we should be moving towards, just like veganism. It's not a blanket, like universal dogma that's applied to every single person in every single situation everywhere. It's just trying to shift the mentality away from the patriarchal, male-dominated societies.
All right, so you've essentially taken up anti-natalist position. My only thing is that if you're going to say that you respect life, just don't give the anti-natalist position a high horse. That's all I'm saying, is that that's a position you chose for your own reasons. But you also, with that,
because you feel that it's damaging. I think you said before that it's damaging that because there's so much negativity, there's so much misanthropic tendency within the anti-natalist circles. Is that?
Let me just put it in my own words, I guess. Let me see. So, you said before, you made the claim that anti-natalism. Well, let me try to admit this out, because it is tricky. So, it is nuanced. Yes, absolutely. So when I said that, oh boy, I'm blanking out here. Give me a second.
Sure.
So we have. I pretty much said that, we should, if we took your position, if everyone took your position, we'd all die out, right?
I'd like to speak to that because I don't necessarily think that would be a bad thing. I think
that's where we kind of have to.
Well, because I don't value human life as superior. to
Okay,
all
so
the
wait,
rest
but
of
you
the
just
life on
said
the
you have
planet.
respect for life. That's the thing. So
I have a
you
respect for the
respect
process. Yes, life itself, nature. And when I say life, I mean it's synonymous with nature.
But we are part of nature. Obviously, nature gave rise to us in the first place,
Right.
so we are a product
Right.
of nature. We are that nature. So I don't get what you're saying.
I agree because now as highly evolved sentient sapient beings that can think and reason and make moral decisions, we can decide that our presence or our manipulation of the environments, our influence on this earth has been more destructive than helpful.
Right, but that doesn't mean it can't change. This is also what I was saying.
I do believe it can change. I actually have hope that human beings could be. We are.
So then, why not try to change it? That's the question.
I am trying to change it in my own ways.
But you won't if you adopt that position, like you said. You would rather that actually you said before
because I'm
preferable.
outnumbered. Because the majority of the people on this earth are uneducated and are immoral and
essentially he's
self-centered.
outnumbered.
Yeah. So,
okay, but that doesn't mean I don't see how I could possibly make the connection with that and say because I'm outnumbered I'm going to not have any kids. That doesn't, to me I can't derive that for my reasons.
There's 100 million reasons because I'm not going to use my kids as some form of leverage in a war that gets many children as I can
my
make.
Kids. So here's the thing. So I think that's another. I guess I want to take the conversation in a different direction now, and this is going to be a new direction. So you said my kids, okay? In essence, we're all star stuff. Like Carl Sagan said, we're all made of the same stuff. Society has given, I guess, labels to life. Like this is your child.
Capitalism.
This is my child. This is your cousin. This is my friend. But ultimately, because we're all the same in the way that we're made up with all the universe's, I guess, materials.
Well, now you sound like a pantheist, brother. I mean,
no. A pantheist is not. That's somebody who thinks that everything is God. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we are atomically the same, all the way through and through. Atomically, right. Atom for atom, we consist of carbon atoms, calcium atoms, all that stuff. We just have happened to have placed labels on ourselves. Like you're my son. As far as I'm concerned, you're as much my son as my own creation, to be honest with you. It just happens to be the way.
That's a beautiful attitude to have, and that's exactly
okay.
I agree with that.
That's what we're all striving for.
So, but here's the thing: I just happened to create a life, so I don't see it as any different a life as somebody else's. To be honest with you, in fact.
But the choices are different.
My emotional investment to that child is really what makes me prioritize them over others, obviously, because they're part of my life. I have to feed it. Society has not yet developed the sense where we can kind of, watch after each other's kids like certain animals do. Certain animals will, adopt their, a child that's absolutely not their own. And that's been seen in nature and observed in nature.
But Daniel, I want to say this right off the bat. I think that you're a wonderful parent, and I think that if there were more parents like you, I wouldn't be against procreation, having children. But the problem is that there aren't. That most people are thoughtless and completely self-serving in their mentality. So
right, but I don't let that get to me. That's the difference, essentially.
Right. No, of course. Now that you have a child, the greatest. I've said this to you, I think, in Messenger. The greatest responsibility and priority you have is to be a good parent and to raise that child properly and give them everything. And I think that you're doing that. So there's no condemnation coming from me. It's the idea of if I were to, have a conversation with a young couple getting ready to have a child, that's where all my energy and focus and intention would be on trying to sway them away from that decision.
It's funny that you're saying that I'm a great parent, but it's almost as if, and I don't say this to insult you or anything like that. I actually have a friend who voted for Trump, let's say, and I kind of feel like you're kind of that friend in a sense because he knows that in voting for Trump, I'm going to lose services most likely for my son, which he needs in order to, get the ABA therapy he needs and stuff like that. So he's actually in his belief that Trump is going to help him, make the world better. He's actually hurting me.
He thought that.
Right. Okay. But he believes this for whatever reasons, just like you think that, while I respect you as a parent, I'm going to, advocate for an anti-natalist position because everyone in the world is just not capable of being as good a parent as you are. So
I'm generalizing. Yeah,
generally
speaking.
So,
yeah.
But both positions ultimately hurt me because they're actually working against people who are like me instead of allowing people who are like me to flourish. You're going to adopt honestly, a position that prevents people like me to flourish.
I'm not even arguing that point. I'm not even arguing that point. But in my experience, in my circles, I've only seen the opposite. I've only seen bad parenting. I was abused when I was younger. I was neglected. I've only seen children who've been neglected. So,
right, but you're allowing that subjective experience to lead you to the conclusions that you've arrived at, and that's not really the objective reality that.
Well, that's okay. That's what we should be discussing. That's what's up for debate, actually. And so let's step it out. Let's take the perspective a little bit broader for a second and say, is there more good in the world than bad, or is there more bad in the world than good?
Right now, there's definitely more bad in the world than good.
There's definitely more bad than good.
And that's okay. So that's why I hold this position. That's it right there.
But that's the thing is, I wouldn't allow that to allow me to hold the position because I know that even though there's more bad than good, it doesn't mean that the world can't be better. And the only way to change it is not to give up on it and let it die.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but I think there's a.
I would like to jump in here. What's it called? Naive hopefulness. There's a word for it in anti-natalism.
Yeah, I'm not being naive. I'm aware of the fact that the world is more even. I'm aware that it may not even change in my own lifetime. But we don't know for sure that it can't change, and I'd rather pursue the optimistic approach, not a naive.
I understand, and I'm not calling you naive, Danielle. I'm referencing that there's a term, I forgot what it's called. Chandler might know.
It's a kind of it's kind of a very pretentious term, to be honest with you, because it's not accurate.
What's it called? Chandler, do you know?
What term are you talking about?
It's like naive ideal. There's a word for it. I wish Trick was here. Naive idealism or whatever. The idea.
I remember the optimism bias.
Yeah, there you go.
So optimism bias. Okay, no problem. So we have but that too. I wonder who created that one because that's really a deficit based.
I've experienced that. I've experienced this tangibly that most people have this optimism bias. That's the point, and that's what leads me to the position.
That's the thing is that doesn't mean that the optimism bias is not valid. Okay, it doesn't mean that it can't be refuted. All right, there's no evidence.
I agree. No, I agree. I think that you're an exception. I think that you might be an extenuating circumstance.
Because I'm an exception, and because I exist, that means that I have that. I see that since I'm human, just like everybody else around me, that we're all subject to the same experiences and same laws or rules of nature that led me to be the way I am. We just need to figure out how to manifest those experiences so that other people might pursue a similar path and not get us in the mess that we're in today. But that's
really quick, I agree. I agree with all that. It's all logical and sound. Really quick, we don't have to discuss this very extensively. But are you an advocate of corporal punishment? Will you spank your kid or inflict physical pain or physical harm?
I try to avoid that kind of conditioning. That's actually not. But every now and then it may be appropriate.
Yeah, because that's actually horrible.
Do you believe? I just want to really quick the question. Do you believe that spanking is necessary?
Yes, there are actually instances which I think spanking is actually a good idea, but it's not for the majority of the time. It's not a good idea. If you're gonna touch a electrical outlet, for example, how else are you going to show the kid what's going to happen to them than by smacking them on the hand to make them feel like that's the kind of pain they're going to feel?
Yeah, almost like kind of rescuing them from harm very quickly.
That's not spanking. That's just a smack on the hand.
Yeah, that's different. That's different. I'm talking about like a premeditated. You did this wrong, so now I'm going to inflict 10 whacks, and that, so you can learn your lesson. This is punishment, so you learn your lesson.
I grew up in the hood, and trust me, everybody believed in corporal punishment.
Yeah. So I was just wondering your take on that was, and we don't have to go any further with. I was just curious.
In that situation, I would kind of restrain and use reasoning depending on the circumstances. But some kids, they just don't have it in them to be reasonable. So I could imagine why, or they just don't, or maybe some parents just don't.
I don't know, because it goes back to the parenting. I don't know.
I would say every case I've ever seen of parents smacking, hitting, slapping their kids was out of anger. It was out of frustration. It was not a form of discipline, but it was literally just a form of displacement, getting out their anger and their frustration, their aggression, on taking it on that child because they were angry. Not done in a composed, thoughtful way. And even if you are in a composed, thoughtful state of mind, that even makes it more to me more atrocious to do something like that, to inflict physical pain. But anyway, let's move on. I wanted to talk about that asymmetrical argument and the optimism bias. Chandler, we interrupted you. What were you going to say a while back?
Yeah, let's see. I kind of forgot what my point was because somebody had said something really interesting, and then I wanted to jump in. I'm trying to remember what was that. Well, see, there was one thing I wanted to ask Daniel. He said something about your position of anti-natalism hurts him somehow, and I don't know what he meant.
Oh, it hurts. It hurts me in the sense that I'm an advocate for making sure that we do things the right way. Simply put. So
Daniel,
if I don't,
you would have to be a parent to every other parent out there in order to actually make that happen. To make that come about.
I never claimed that I would be able to do that.
You would need to educate all of the other adults out there who are not even close to ideal in terms of their parenting skills.
I get it. I'm not debating. I'm not debating that, but let me tell you.
And trust me, I live in the ghetto and trying to criticize these idiots.
Yeah, I know. Listen. I was born in New York City, bro. I was raised in Queens for all this time. I'm not a stranger to that. I taught out in Jamaica High School. I taught out in Springfield Gardens, Queens. Let's put it that way. Okay, so I'm aware of how the parents are with their kids over there.
As an aside, I'm from the Bronx as well. I'm from the Bronx, New York.
It's Yuri here. I've got a couple of quick questions. I've got a couple of quick questions for Daniel and Poffo. First one is, can either of you hold a position other than you do, in the sense that could you have chosen otherwise? And number two is, how do we know there is more harm in the world than good?
I would love to explore that second question. And the first question, since none of us believe in free will, it's already answered.
So the answer is you can't hold any position that you do, and Daniel can't hold any position that he does.
Right.
My experiences make up.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, that is so, yeah. Well, see, the thing is, what I want to say about that, Yuri, yes, it's true. Yeah, neither of them at this time could be holding any position other than the one that they do, given determinism.
Right.
Given the experiences, given what I've seen, given my life experience, my knowledge, my memories, my own relationship with my father, all of these things, combined to formulate and create the staunch position that I hold when it comes to anti-natalism.
Okay, so we have two memes fighting each other, or fighting, or.
I see what you're saying. Yes. So essentially, yes, our ideas are competing, but that's what causes change. Also, ideas do cause change.
Because on some level, and for either it works vice versa for either of us. On some level, one of us could have been in a kind of vacuum, or could have had certain experiences that actually tainted our perspective, and so we may be wrong. We might not be objective. He might be objective. He might not be objectively optimistic, and I might not be objectively pessimistic, and it all depends on what the majority says, which goes back to my point, is there, which is your second question, is there more evil and harm and chaos and suffering and pain in the world than there is pleasure and fulfillment and happiness and peace? And that is a philosophical question that we should dive into, because I would love to explore this. We actually tried to tackle some of this in my last show with Chandler, to be or not to be. That question of whether existence itself is life worth living, or is there just too much pain? Because as Trick would say, he would like to just end life, and the voluntary human extinction movement, which I somewhat agree with on a certain level, but not that life as a whole should ever cease. I believe that life is the purpose of the universe, is to experience subjectivity and all of these innumerable experiences that organisms are undergoing and experiencing.
Sorry, did I hear you use the word purpose?
I may have. I don't know. At some point.
Okay.
I sure.
Can we continue?
Yeah. Go ahead.
So, what was the second point that Yuri had? You said you would love to address.
How do we know there's more harm or bad than the good?
Right. I think I'll give you the pedestal for that one, Poffo. I think you know a good amount about that.
Oh, okay. Can you guys hear my fan? I don't want my computer.
Yeah.
I'm here blowing.
Yeah,
All
we
right,
hear some noise. You might want to turn that off.
Yeah, my laptop might melt, so we'll see how it goes. Okay, is there more harm than good? Is there more evil and chaos and suffering than pleasure and joy and pain?
Measure it?
I would say that in life, in the experience of life, there will always be both. But I believe the task of human beings is to level that out and find that equilibrium and that balance where things are much more operating in much more cohesion and in a symbiotic relationship with ourselves and with the earth. And right now, at this current point in time, that's not occurring. And that's why my choice is to not have children. Would my choice? Because the greater question here is: would my choice be to end all existence? Period. Would that be the ethical, moral, right thing to do? If you guys ever see iRobot, that was the same premise at the end of that movie. The AI said, you can't take care of yourselves, the humans. So there was like a revolution, and the robots were taking over because they looked ahead and they extrapolated and they said human beings are destructive and all they do is cause war and violence and harm. So we need to actually subjugate them for their own good. And
I
that's
think
kind of
the
the
asking
argument.
is
Yeah.
what is that humans can't do to take care of themselves? What is that though? That's what I think Yuri's asking.
What is that? I mean,
what is it that humans can't do to take care of themselves? Like, what are the specifics about why there's more bad in the world than good? That's what he's asking. So I could.
Is that what you're asking? Is that what you're asking, Yuri?
I'm asking, how can we even measure it?
Yeah, he's saying, how do we even know? And I'm saying that because of since the advent of the internet, we have incredible communication tools, and we can observe and detect and monitor a lot more than we ever could in recorded history of what goes on this earth. And I would say that in the majority of human societies, it is a brutal, stratified, corrupt struggle. That everything is nothing is ideal.
With Steven Pinker?
I've listened to some of his lectures and stuff and read some stuff. What specifically are you?
Basically, I can't remember the title of his book. The Better Angels in Us or something like that, where he.
I know exactly what you're talking about, Yuri. I know exactly what it is. Yeah, okay, that's good. It's essentially what Pinker was talking about. That this is the best time to be. It's the best time to be alive, essentially.
Yeah. The best time and the worst time, because with all of these advancements, we've not progressed, and Yuri's going to hate this, but we've not progressed morally and ethically. Our technology, our communication, every advancement we've made, it's not been consistent. We're not evolving consistently. We're all evolving, but we're not evolving consistently, and that's a problem.
I think Mr. Pinker or Dr. Pinker would disagree with you.
I think because he's saying that with advancements that the human survival rate, we're living longer, we're healthier, we're happier, all these things.
Violent.
Sure.
Less violent is the primary one.
Depends on what part of the world you're talking about. Depends on whether we're talking about a first world country or a third world country, because third world countries are still experiencing, everything that we were experiencing in the Middle Ages. I mean, it just depends on what section of the populace we're talking about.
Yep.
Now, listen, things are getting better, I would say. Yeah, go ahead.
Things are getting better as we evolve. Things are getting better, but at the same time, there are pockets of there's corruption and there's just deviant behavior everywhere in human societies, because we are advancing. We're struggling between the reptile brain and the frontal lobe.
Hey, I remember now what I was going to say. If it is we determine that society is improving and that humanity is going to evolve to a point where we will cause more good than bad in the world, maybe at that point it's okay to procreate. So people should not procreate until then. Maybe that.
And I actually agree.
Chandler, we're there already and we don't know it.
Right. So that would defeat the progress. Purpose of the progress. That's what my argument is to Poffo about that. And
can I say something? This is the problem here. I mean, this is a completely anthropocentric conversation. We are not doing well overall because of how we're treating non-human animals. that we're only talking about like human societies and what human beings are experiencing, then we've missed the whole picture. The animals, other animals were here long before we were.
Science is coming up with ways to substitute those animal foods or whatnot. I mean, that's just progress.
And I agree with that, and I support all
and
of that.
I'm pretty sure those people who would rather, if they could eat something that kind of tastes like meat but isn't, I'm pretty sure most people would do that. I mean, I'm not. I would definitely do that. I would rather, listen, I have a taste for meat, but that's because of my deterministic conditioning. I can't help that.
I have a taste for meat, and I eat the. I have a taste for meat, and I eat the veggie meats, and I tell myself that this is healthier, and I'm making an ethical choice.
All to take the or say that the position to have no kids is the best possible thing to do.
Repeat the first part of that.
So, what you said. Why not wait for us to catch up to you, my friend? That's essentially what I'm saying. Instead of telling me that the best position to take is to not have any kids at all, let me catch up to you.
I wanted to specifically address what was it? Okay. You said in many words in the other podcasts and probably in this podcast. It's essentially like, okay, we know that we are almost biologically outnumbered. Sort of, I believe the smart, critical thinking, conscientious people, I think, are in the minority with those who are not fit to be parents, and they're just continuing to multiply and breed. I think you said at one point that you believe that that's why people like, oh, that's right, our conversation. You said that's why people like me should have kids, that we should try and build up our numbers and make the world a better place.
Because the best communication, the best possible amount of time you can have with anybody is with your own kid. Okay, and that's the thing, is that your memes can pass on to them more effectively, I would say, because your society will leave you to be with your child.
But there's also outside influences also.
Sure, right. But that's your job as a parent to just keep them out, keep them to the right influences. Like my son is being exposed to,
I want them exposed to capitalism. So, they will have no choice in that.
I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible or practical to do that.
Old to do that. No, well, here's the thing. I would talk to them when they're old enough, just like my parents talked to me when I was old enough to understand what it was. And that's not a big deal. I would say that's really not a strong point, though it's reasonable. Definitely
but
something
the question is, though, like, should we the intellectuals, and I'm saying this, I'm not trying to be self-aggrandizing, but I'm just saying, you follow my train of thought. Should we, the intellectuals, be the ones having children so that we can outbreed the ignorant, stupid people who are voting for Trump, who are supporting capitalism, who are destroying the earth, who are bad parents, who are abusive? Should we be trying to outnumber them, like a Game of Thrones kind of scenario where our children, our legacy, that's everything?
Yes, I would say yes. Yeah? Absolutely, because we want the right parents to raise the kids. That's what we want in order to maximize our well-being. That's because we have. I listen. You're an advocate of all this stuff for a reason, because obviously, and I give you you're a very good guy. You're definitely a guy that I would really want to see more of if I could help it. Which is why I'm just saddened that such a thing would go to waste if your memes would not be handed down.
I understand. Because I am passing on, Daniel, I am passing on my memes through my writing and through these podcasts, through my relationships, through the friendships I've made, through my activism. I am speaking, and my voice is everywhere. I'm doing more than I could ever do if I had the responsibility and the obligation of having my own child.
But hear me out, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but this is a very important thought. Science has proven already that the person that a child listens to the most and absorbs from the most is their own parent. I'm sorry, but you can adopt a child, but they're just not going to be as avid a listener, as reasonable as your words to them may be, as your own child. Your child is like a sponge for you.
Yeah. No, I see the point. I see the point, but I don't agree, because you adopt a child. They're not yours biologically. You're going to have just as much influence on them, unless they have some kind of.
If you adopt them, right after within the first 3 years of their life, sure.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Young children.
Sure, but how often does that happen? Also, I think it's less likely to happen for most people.
So your argument for procreation is we have more influence on our own children, and that's how we can make the world a better place.
I'd like to.
Should I just add one caveat to that? Yes, we're more likely to have, because of the fact that it's more likely to happen, than adoption is, because to be honest with you, there are fewer instances of children being put up for adoption than there are children being born of by parents who want to raise that child.
But just percentage-wise, there are more screwed up people in this world than there are stable and enlightened individuals. That's my point.
But that's besides the point, because we can still address that issue if we propagate those memes into our own kids in the most effective manner, which is to have our own kids versus adopting somebody else's, because that's what happens more of. It happens to be more the case.
Like I said, here's another thing.
Go ahead, Yuri. Go ahead, Yuri. You want to say something?
Clarify a point here.
Right.
In the blank slate, according to Steven Pinker, he had some data, and he said roughly 10% of our attributes come from parents. So about half comes from genetics, which obviously those two get conflated. And about half come from our peers when we're growing up. So as parents and our memes and things like that, if we want to influence our kids, we just make sure their friends are what we want to see.
Correct. That's ultimately, I would actually say then the parent is 100% to do with it. That's the case. I don't see how he gets that number considering what you just said.
Well, basically they've done studies with twins and either fraternal or genetic twins, and basically they can sort of attribute about 10% to the parents in terms of sort of influencing in terms of memes.
Okay. Well, just in terms of memes. Okay, but that's not. Again, the parent has a substantial influence apart from just memes. That includes.
Yeah, but that's about roughly 50%. Roughly.
Okay, interesting. That's interesting. And then, but what about the memes that? Or what about the?
And then the memes. The rest of the memes come from our immediate environment, like our friends, our immediate circle.
Right, but that's.
I'll be right back, guys. I gotta take a restroom break. Be right back.
And because it's the parent's choice, I would say they actually have more than just 50% to do with it.
Well, it depends if your parent. I don't know how much my parents actually influence my friends.
Well,
my choice of friends.
It shows the environment that they would be in, and that, in essence, was what led your friends to be.
I would say it's pretty much impossible in this society for parents to police the friends of their children. It's not even possible.
You can definitely be aware of how the neighborhood is. Like if you want to move to a good neighborhood versus a bad neighborhood, a parent generally knows what to expect in both cases.
Yeah, I think it's basically, just speaking personally, my parents really hated my best friend, and they really liked my other best friend.
They shouldn't have hated it, because I think hating somebody was a bad influence. Would possibly be a bad
comments.
Right.
Yeah, and there's another thing. Sometimes parents hate the friends of their kids because, say, they don't want them to hang out with somebody because they're black or because they're gay or because they're of a different religion or something like that. And that happens too.
Well, in my particular case, my parents didn't want me hanging out with this kid because he took drugs and wasn't terribly nice to his dad.
And I think that with Steven Pinker's knowledge on that you bring up very, very well, we can learn from that and change that so we can make those numbers a little bit better. That's all that says to me. I think that just leaves the room open for me to really be aware, to do even better, to avoid it just being a...
Daniel, I want to ask you a question. This is not an attack or criticism or anything. I'd like to know sort of the chronology of the situation. Your idea that having children, being a good parent, is the most powerful way to make the world a better place, to improve the quality of life. Did this come about before or after you had your first child?
Oh, this was already in place before I had my child.
So this was the impetus. This was your motivating, mentality, belief system. Before you chose to have a child, or it was before?
Yes.
You're saying it was before? Okay. Because I just wanted to ask, I wondered about that, and I thought for a while, again, this is not an attack or criticism, but I wondered if this entire thing was just an elaborate sort of rationalization or justification because it's after the fact.
Absolutely.
Like, now that you have a child.
Absolutely, yeah. It was. I don't deny that. You have to listen. I have to be prepared for somebody in this world to try and contradict what it is that I do and label it as wrong. I've worked my entire life to make sure that I'm as consistent as possible with doing things in a way that maximizes well-being to myself and to others. And if I can help it, I will spread that meme to the best of my ability. And knowing that I can very well fail in doing so, I can still sleep soundly at night knowing that at least I tried.
Right, but the short answer I'm saying is that you felt this way, and that's why you had a kid. It's not that you developed. It's not that you developed this after.
That's in part why I had a kid. I also had a partner that also wanted to have a kid, so it kind of, and she's a good person, and that kind of also factored into my family situation is good. So there's a lot of factors involved.
This leads to the next question: is that because in much of what you said, I felt like there were environmental influences. You had the sort of the pressure of your partner, of family, of maybe being in a traditional environment. These things, like essentially led to it, and this is kind of a justification for it. But if you're saying now that this is the way you felt before you had a child, and so this leads to the next question: is so. If you didn't have a child right now, if you had never had a child, this is the way. Is this how you feel? And you would still choose to bring a child into this world for that purpose?
Yes, I would still defend if there's somebody out there that would be a great parent that I know would be a good parent and do the right thing and spread the right memes, to help maximize our well-being.
More specifically, you personally, would you, if you didn't have a child right now, knowing everything you know right now, even knowing which the ailments that that your son might be suffering from, would you still choose to have a child right now?
Yes.
Okay, that's kind of important.
Just to add that, good question. When my son died when he was 16, we had tough years where he had really bad epilepsy, and my wife and I would go through it again in a heartbeat.
Right. I mean, you would go through it, but would you want your child to go through it? That's the more important.
Well, here's the thing. So this is where I can come in and kind of talk on this, because I'm kind of trained on this. I have a master's in special education. I've trained on understanding autistics and people with disabilities, their lives, their perspectives on how society sees them, their perspectives on how, so let me talk about that for a little bit. So essentially, when we say things like, would you have brought in a kid if you knew he would have autism? That's a deficit. Okay, so if you're going to say that that's wrong, that's actually a deficit-based perspective towards people with autism. Because if you ask a person with autism, they're actually happy to be experiencing a lot of what they do. They love life. They're actually very happy people, okay, for the most part. And they're happy being here. In fact, my son alone, he's my biggest evidence of that. He's so happy that he always sees me and he says, "Dad," always with a hug, plays music, talks to me, loves to hug me, hold me.
I mean, these are the nurturing years. They're still being coddled and protected from the world.
Even beyond that, have you ever seen the documentary "Autism Is a World"?
No.
Watch it. It's a story about a woman, okay, who's autistic, who of course grew up with people pitying her because she's autistic, and all the while, she was just thinking to herself, I can't communicate, but if I could communicate, if I had the means to communicate, boy, would I told some of these people off. They have no idea about me and what the hell I was experiencing. They thought I was sad. I wasn't sad. I was happy the whole time.
Yeah, and I don't want to fall into like this ableist language or looking down on.
That's what I wanted to address before it went there, because that's kind of
no, it's not. I'm not judging subjectively. Yeah. Oh, you don't know their experience. Their experience might be terrible. You're just imposing your own, your own pleasures on them. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the question was really directed toward your attitude toward just bringing life into the world right now. Your choice right now.
Question, like if I had known that my child was going to be autistic, would you have brought him in? And I said yes. That's why I said
because you have a positive, non-deficit based outlook on.
Well, no, I know the objective reality is anything but deficit based. It shouldn't be deficit based. The objective reality and the evidence.
Do you think the deficit based being deficit based is really a negative thing? I say that's about being cautious. That's about being.
No, cautious. No, cautious is mutually exclusive to a deficit based perspective. Being cautious is just if you want to be, you don't want to be responsible for something you're not fully aware, wouldn't put that person's life in jeopardy or wouldn't make that person's life a misery. Okay, that's different. So, I mean, this is not, so maybe the right question to ask is, if you thought your child was going to be born with maybe a microencephaly, okay, that's different, because I think that in a sense they're suffering, okay? And I think you've observed the suffering. There's nothing there. If I could help it, I wouldn't, do it in that situation. But
someone could argue that that's you're making arbitrary distinctions there. But I'm not disagreeing with you because of your
case in
knowledge.
the UK with Charlie Gard.
Or what about that? Okay, so what if? Okay, so let me do. Maybe this is a better analogy. So the girl who was born with skin that kept melting off. Okay,
boy or girl?
It was a girl.
Kept melting off.
Yes, there was a woman that was born with.
Hell, God's an asshole.
Her name was Charlie. Could be.
WSD.
Anyway, it doesn't matter.
I think I'd like to broaden the scope of the conversation, because I think it's more interesting, because we can go around and around about this. Because if you notice, I'm not flat out disagreeing with you, because we're just coming at it from using different sets of knowledge, different experiences, different perspectives, and I don't think anybody's really right or wrong when it comes to this. I'd like to.
I'm trying to think of a situation where I would say no. I'm just trying to think of a situation where I would say no. So far it's been saying the greater point, or the more interesting conversation is about the nature of life and existence itself. Do you believe that life is fundamentally there's a quote somewhere. It says I don't know, just regardless of everything, whatever it is you're experiencing, you still believe that the world is a good place or something. Like it's the notion that, like, do we believe that experience itself is fundamentally a good thing or a bad thing? And I'm still asking that question when it comes to human beings and animals, but I don't question the universe, and I don't question nature itself, because I believe that nature is greater than us. It's doing what it's doing for good reasons. Trick would argue that it's all causal, and there's no.
Somebody just left.
I'm not sure who is it. Is
John
Daniel?
left.
I don't know what happened.
Daniel. I think Daniel dropped.
Oh yeah, I think he dropped from the call. I'm not sure what happened there. So I don't know if he hears you, but you can still finish your point as long as we're recording.
Yeah, I just think that we should try and determine this, whether existence is worth it or not. Yuri, if you could choose to never have been born, to not experience anything, just oblivion, oblivion, nothingness. Would you rather be here? Would you rather experience everything that you have with your son, with everything, or would you rather not exist?
So, I've enjoyed my life. I've had good things happen, bad things happen.
Right. And what about a person who was literally born into slavery in some Afghani village somewhere? Someone that's literally sexually molested or abused their entire life, and all they've experienced is trauma and pain and suffering.
But then again, the people who are sort of routinely sexually molested, I think they're by far the minority. And the second thing is, if you go to Africa and you look at the happiness quotients, they're as good, if not better, than the West's.
It's debatable. Depending on, with poverty, with famine, with poor living conditions, that's really debatable. Again, it depends on the region, the geography.
It depends on the region, and then basically, the largest correlation with happiness is actually the difference between the very rich and the very poor. It's not if everyone's very poor, they're happy, but if there's a big difference between the very poor and the very rich, then happiness goes down.
I would agree with you in terms of character, in terms of their character, in terms of what they value. Those who are non-materialistic, those who don't have all the pressures and worries and stuff, and picture Aborigines or something.
Now, I hate to cut you guys short, but I actually have to get going, so we'll have to wrap this up in the next few minutes.
Oh yeah.
But yes,
I forgot that I joined you guys late.
Yeah, and so here's the thing. I mean, there's so much important stuff both of you guys have said. And so I just want to put my 2 cents in here at the very end, because I haven't said all that much. I personally find that all of the discussions about whether or not the humans brought into existence by humans. Oh, hey there, Daniel. Looks like you dropped from the call for a while. I was just about to make a final statement because I actually had to end this. I'm going to be done for tonight. So what I was saying is the discussions about how happy the humans are that are procreated, I find, while they're valid in terms of debating antinatalism, I find them ultimately all irrelevant because of the harm that those humans are going to cause both to other humans and the non-human animals. Therefore, I'm not concerned with how happy they are, because they may be totally blissed out. But if they cause harm to anyone, then it is not worth it.
Yeah, but autistic kids are not. They don't have a history. People with autism do not have a history of creating harm to other people. Actually, so I would argue that.
He was speaking in general.
Only in
speaking in general.
Exactly, only in self-defense.
Chandler was speaking on a universal level about the idea of bringing life into existence, not necessarily autistic or anyone with.
No, but they're part of the population still, so you have to address that. You can't put an umbrella term. You can't apply them in an umbrella sense.
Yeah, but you do understand that by promoting the idea that procreation is okay, that means people procreate, and then you have the worst of the worst people that will happen, the serial murderers, serial rapists, and not to mention all carnists are murderers. That's just a fact. And
I agree. If we don't have more stable living conditions, if we don't have less stratification and less the promotion of this mentality of scarcity, if we continue in this monetary system, if we continue on with speciesism, then the asymmetrical argument wins out. I mean, it's not worth it. There is more negative. There is more pain and suffering than there is
but
pleasure.
There's a lot of advances, just like Pinker said. I think I like that.
I agree. I agree. We're always moving. There is progress because life, nature is always on a trajectory toward greater levels of coherence and cohesion and benevolence.
Why bother being antinatalist? That's the thing.
Because I'm only antinatalist when it comes to human beings in this current society.
But I'm not anti. We're talking about with respect to the progress that's being made.
No, not necessarily, because I believe that in general. I'm
doing a study on animals. He's doing a study on human beings. It's progress.
I missed the first part, but I believe that all organisms are naturally inclined. There's a proclivity toward greater levels of consciousness in all life forms, given enough time, given enough experience. Their brains develop, they grow, they develop higher reasoning, higher mental capacities. That's what I'm talking about.
And that possibility is why I think that antinatalism is kind of flawed in that respect. I mean, it's sure. I keep going back to this.
No, sure. Yeah, but
argument.
Again, remember what I said. It's kind of like saying it's not a good idea to keep following the biblical precept to be fruitful and multiply at this point in time right now. It's kind of like saying, let's shift away from that and let's be a little more conscientious.
I would agree with you if there were no progress at all. I would agree with you if there were no progress. But unfortunately, there's progress, so I can't say that.
I believe human beings are capable of both. We're capable of atrocities, and we're capable of the highest forms of creativity and beneficent behavior. So I think that we're both. We have that potential. But I'm just responding to the current state of affairs in human societies right now. I'm not saying that we don't have the potential to change or progress.
But given that there's still progress in the right direction, I'd say that the whole idea of having no kids is moot, because there's progress ultimately, and there can be more room for improvement.
I actually think there would be more progress if we stopped reproducing, worked out the problems that we have right now.
I would agree, Poffo, because if there are fewer people, then I believe the progress can actually happen much faster, because then there's fewer people who have to be educated. It's much easier to get agreement when there's fewer people in the first place.
The only reason you're a good parent, Daniel, is because you have selectively chosen who you allow into your life, and you're creating a more secure environment for your child and your life. Think about it. With more people comes more problems. With more people comes more corruption. With more people comes more crime and all of the negative consequences of society.
But that's not what the evidence says. With more, at least, in absolute numbers, you might be right. But in terms of a fraction of the population, the world has improved dramatically with more people.
Yeah, let me respond, Yuri. You're right. What did you say in terms of quantity? I am right, but in terms of creativity, our creative
populations, it's a much better world.
As we evolve, we develop more creativity, we innovate, we improve living conditions. Yes, but as we multiply, the quality of life and the quality of living conditions goes down exponentially.
That's not actually true, though, Poffo. That's the problem.
Shows. I think maybe we should all read Pinker's book. Maybe we should all read Pinker's book and then come back with footnotes and then have this discussion when we're all prepared to have it.
How about I was so caught up in so many other arguments and debates today that had nothing to do with this, so I was really unprepared for it. But I think I did well given the circumstances. Like Chandler was wrapping it up, so he has to go.
Yes.
We can do a part two. You want to have a
and I gotta catch up with those guys. So
because we'll have to end this one now. But yes, I mean we can continue this same talk in future episodes, and we'll be able to listen to the past and what we said.
A month or two.
If you guys need that long before you discuss this again, it's deep. But I feel that this is important, and I feel that this was worth the time discussing it because, guys, the whole reason we do these talks is I hope that it will make a positive difference. I don't think anybody talking here is going to change anyone's position. That's not what I think. But I think this will allow people who are questioning this about whether or not to procreate, they may listen to this talk and then they will make their decision after that. All we can do is provide our perspectives. That's all anyone can do. And so I thank you all for joining us for this talk, and thank you to all of our listeners who have been listening to this. Comment and let us know your thoughts. And any last words by anybody else?
It's a pleasure talking to all of you guys. You guys are fine
y'all
individuals.
Stay
You guys are great. So
thanks for the opportunity, and everyone be safe and be well.
Be good, guys.
All right.
Anyway.
Okay, you guys have a good night, and everyone, thank you for listening, and goodbye.
Yeah!